Moses almost missed the burning bush. That part gets skipped all the time because everybody rushes to the dramatic moment. The fire, the voice, the I am speech. But if you slow the story down for a second, something really interesting happens before God even speaks. The bush was already burning. God was already there. The miracle had already started. And Moses almost kept walking. That's crazy when you think about it, because imagine almost missing the moment that changes your entire life because you were busy doing Tuesday. Exodus chapter 3 verse 2 says, "There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up." Then verse 3 says, "So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up." That little decision matters more than people realize. I will go over and see. That was the moment. Not the fire, the turn. The Hebrew word used there is sur. It means to turn aside, to step off the path you were already on, to interrupt your routine and move towards something unusual. And honestly, that's where a lot of people miss God now, because we've trained ourselves to ignore interruptions. Everything is hurry, keep scrolling, next video, reply that email, finish the assignment, don't think too hard. Meanwhile, God is over here lighting metaphorical bushes on fire in people's lives, and everybody's too distracted to stop walking. Moses stopped walking. That changed history. Now here's the thing nobody talks about enough. Moses wasn't 25 and full of potential when this happened. He was 80. Some of you panic when life doesn't work out by 27. Meanwhile, Moses was somewhere in the desert, babysitting sheep at 80 years old, thinking his important years were probably behind him. And honestly, fair enough, because Moses had already lived like 3 different lives by this point. First, he was the adopted grandson of Pharaoh, which means this man grew up rich, royal education, royal clothes, royal food, probably walked around Egypt with that "my family owns half the government" confidence. Then one day he sees an Egyptian guard beating a Hebrew slave. Now Moses knew he was Hebrew by blood even though he grew up Egyptian by privilege. Imagine the identity crisis already happening there. And in a moment of anger, Moses kills the Egyptian. Let's be honest about scripture. The Bible does not sanitize people. Moses becomes a murderer. Then he hides the body in the sand like this is somehow going to stay secret in a whole civilization. The next day, another Hebrew man basically says, "What are you gonna do? Kill me too?" And immediately Moses realizes, oh, I'm cooked. Pharaoh hears about it. Moses runs. Everything collapses just like that. The palace gone, the status gone, the future gone. And honestly, failure changes people, especially public failure, especially the kind you can't explain away. Some of you know exactly what that feels like. One mistake, one situation, one season, and suddenly the version of yourself you thought you'd become disappears. That was Moses. By the time Exodus chapter 3 happens, Egypt probably felt like another lifetime ago. Now he's just a shepherd, quiet life, wife named Zipporah, kids, desert routine, wake up, lead sheep, find water, sleep, repeat. Nothing dramatic, and that's exactly where God meets him. Not in a temple, not during a worship night, not after a 21-day fast. In the middle of work. Honestly, I love that because it destroys this idea that God only moved in spiritual-looking places. Some of the biggest moments in scripture happened during regular life. David was tending sheep. Gideon was hiding while working. Peter was cleaning fishing nets. The Samaritan woman was fetching water. Moses was literally at work. God interrupts ordinary people in ordinary moments. That's the pattern. And sometimes the interruption doesn't even look spiritual at first. It just looks strange. A bush burning but not burning up. Something small that refuses to behave normally. And if you're paying attention, those moments matter, like when something keeps bothering you and you can't explain why, or when a conversation won't leave your mind for weeks, or when you suddenly realize, wait, I don't think I'm supposed to stay here forever, or when everybody around you thinks something is normal, but deep down, you know, something about this is off. Those are burning bush moments too. The scary thing is most people walk past them because responding to God usually requires interruption, and interruption is uncomfortable. Moses walks toward the bush and suddenly God calls his name. Moses, Moses, and Moses answers, "Here I am." Then comes one of the coldest lines in scripture, Exodus chapter 3 verse 5. "Do not come any closer, take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." Now this part is deeper than people think. The ground wasn't magically different dirt. 10 feet away it was the same wilderness, same rocks, same dust, same dry air. What made it holy was the presence of God. That changes everything, because people keep waiting to arrive at holy places while ignoring the fact that God makes places holy by entering them. Your bedroom can become holy ground. Your car can become holy ground. A random cafe can become holy ground. The presence changes the atmosphere. And then God tells Moses to remove his sandals. Why? Because sandals were protection, distance, barrier. God was basically saying, you cannot approach this moment casually. There are some encounters that require vulnerability, some moments where you stop performing, Stop pretending. Stop protecting yourself. And honestly, that's hard now because this generation has mastered irony. Everybody jokes through everything, deflects everything, turns pain into memes before actually processing it. Sometimes the memes are hilarious, let's be fair, but eventually you have to stand somewhere, honestly, before God without hiding behind humor, aesthetics, productivity, or whatever version of yourself you use to avoid being fully seen. Moses removes the sandals, then God says something powerful. Exodus chapter 3, verse 7. I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. Notice all the verbs there. Seen, heard, concerned. God is not distant from suffering. That matters because people sometimes talk about faith like God is emotionally disconnected from human pain. Scripture says otherwise. God tells Moses, I see it. That's huge, especially for people who feel invisible. Then comes the plot twist. Because Moses is probably thinking, wow, God's about to do something incredible. And God basically says, yes, through you. Exodus chapter 3, verse 10. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Imagine the silence after that sentence. Because absolutely not. Moses immediately starts panicking. And honestly, relatable. He gives God like 5 excuses in a row. Who am I? What if they don't believe me? What if I say the wrong thing? I'm not a good speaker. Please send literally anybody else. That last one especially feels human. Because eventually Moses stops sounding spiritual and just says, Lord, respectfully, no. And this is one of my favorite things about the Bible. God still uses him. Because apparently God is not waiting for fearless people. Good news for everybody currently overthinking their entire existence at 2 a.m. Moses wasn't confident. He was available. That's different. And honestly, most people God used in scripture were terrified at first. Jeremiah thought he was too young. Gideon thought he was insignificant. Esther was scared. Peter was impulsive and chaotic. Jonah literally ran away. The pattern isn't perfect people. The pattern is God interrupts ordinary people and asks them to trust him anyway. And Moses' wilderness years, those weren't wasted years. That part hit me hard when I first understood it. For 40 years, Moses learned the desert, the same desert the Israelites would later travel through. He learned where water was, how weather changed, which routes were dangerous. He thought he was just surviving exile. God was training a guide. See, humans are obsessed with visible progress. God is obsessed with preparation, and preparation often looks boring while you're inside it. That's why some seasons feel confusing. You think nothing important is happening. Meanwhile, God is quietly building skills you'll need later. Some of you are frustrated with seasons that are actually training grounds. That job you hate, that hidden season, that lonely period, that rebuilding phase after failure. Not every wilderness is punishment. Sometimes it's preparation. Sometimes the 40 years is the curriculum. And honestly, that changes how you see delay. Because maybe your life isn't behind schedule. Maybe you're learning terrain. Maybe the thing you thought disqualified you actually deepened you. Maybe the version of you that failed in Egypt needed to die, so the version of you that could lead people could finally emerge. Because Moses at 40 kills a man with anger. Moses at 80 confronts Pharaoh with obedience. Those are not the same man. And somewhere between those two versions was a desert. That's where transformation happened. So maybe the question isn't, why am I in the wilderness? Maybe the better question is, what is this season teaching me that I'll need later? Because God wastes nothing. Not the failure, not the waiting, not the silence, not even the years you think disappeared. And maybe today your burning bush won't look dramatic. Maybe it'll look like a conversation you can't stop thinking about, a conviction you keep avoiding, a dream returning after years, a restlessness you can't explain. Pay attention to what keeps burning without burning out. That might be where God is standing. Take off your shoes. You're closer to holy ground than you think. 40 years in the wilderness was not Moses being forgotten. It was training season. See, Moses thought his life had ended in Egypt. In his head, the story was over. Palace gone, reputation gone, future gone. Now he's just somewhere in the desert chasing sheep around under the hot sun like a man whose best years are behind him. But God was doing something sneaky. Because while Moses thought he was surviving, he was actually studying. For 40 years, this man learned the wilderness like the back of his hand. Every dry path, every hidden water source, every dangerous mountain pass, every weather shift, every place a flock could rest safely. The same desert Moses probably complained about sometimes was the exact desert he would later lead millions of people through. That's insane when you think about it. The place that looked like exile was actually preparation. The wilderness wasn't punishment, it was the classroom. Moses thought he was just a shepherd. Meanwhile, heaven was basically building the greatest wilderness guide in human history. And honestly, that's how God works a lot of the time. You think you're wasting years because nothing glamorous is happening. Meanwhile, God is teaching you endurance, patience, discernment, survival, wisdom, compassion, attention, things that can't be downloaded overnight because some lessons only grow in slow seasons. Some of you are mad that your life doesn't look exciting right now, but if God showed you what these years are preparing you for, you'd stop calling the season pointless. Sometimes the job isn't the job. Sometimes the isolation isn't isolation. Sometimes the delay isn't rejection. Sometimes the 40 years is the curriculum. Every story is evidence. If something in this story stayed with you and if it's still sitting somewhere in your chest, that's not an accident. That's the thing we don't scroll past. Hit like, not as a reflex, but as a marker, because somewhere out there, a witness is still looking for proof that their story isn't over. And this might be how they find it. Pass it to that friend, the one whose testimony is still being written, the one who hasn't heard the scripture told this way before. And subscribe to Bible Rebooted. We don't come here to perform. We come here to tell the truth and to hand you the evidence that you were never as far gone as it felt. Every story is evidence. It's your boy Kairos Ade signing out. Like, subscribe and stream the music.
Darkness, thinking that it was light. A prisoner to the night, couldn't win the fight. Relied on a substance to get me through the day, but the high was just a lie, it was stealing me away. Addiction put chains on my soul, heavy and cold. A story that felt like it already been told.